Michael Young is joining us. Michael is with the Idaho Department of Fish and Game. He received his bachelor's degree in biology from Northwest Nazarene University in 2002 and started his career with the Idaho Department of Fish and Game in 2005. In 2017, he became the Regional Wildlife Biologist in the Habitat program assigned to the McCall Habitat District. In his spare time, he enjoys mountain recreation in the form of hunting, skiing, backpacking, angling, and hiking, often with his children. Michael, take it away. We're a little over on time, but I think you can give us the best 10 minutes of the day. I'm sure of it. So
sure.
We're going to you.
Can you hear me okay?
You sound great.
Okay. Well, I can be pretty fast. So I'm here to talk about how Idaho Fish and Game is involved in all of this. I was born and raised in Nampa, and I grew up on playing and recreating at a cabin on Payette Lake. So the water quality in the North Fork is near and dear to my heart. And I have the privilege of working in the watershed as a major part of my job. Idaho Fish and Game, we care about wildlife habitat and fish habitat, and fortunately, water quality and wildlife habitat go hand in hand. So I'm going to start with kind of the summary of our projects over the last 10 years, the last decade. Fish and Game has been involved with multiple project partners, and you'll see a slide of that later. But as you can see, we've done a lot of projects. This is total stream length, stream bank length that we've worked on. You see in the North Fork Payette, we've worked on 1.8 miles with 2 different property owners, which are listed there below. Boulder and Willow Creeks spent probably the most time, and I've worked on about 5 miles of stream bank length on private ranchers and ranchettes. And then on the Gulf Fork River, we've done one project too, trying to stabilize stream banks there for a total length of 7 miles. So Emily was just sharing about how the water quality hadn't changed that much, but hopefully the small changes she saw had something to do with our projects. And then I was gonna just wow you here with our list of project partners. I won't take time to read them all, but I had this slide busy on purpose because you can see how many folks are involved in these projects. We really have a full decade worth of projects, and if we jumped over a ridge either direction, this list would get even longer, working in the Little Salmon or in the South Fork of the Salmon watersheds. All right, so then I thought I would just share a few of our techniques and how we're helping these creeks out, how we're changing what's going on the landscape. In this case, we're working on willow revetments. We've got some students and individual volunteers here. And let me jump to the next slide and show you kind of what this process is. So a willow revetment is entirely built out of willows using the surface soil. And that picture on the left with the snow, you can see generally there's a willow structure there, a willow revetment that we built by hand. We just used the contours of the bank. But generally, if we have an actively eroding bank in some of the larger rivers like Gold Fork River or the main stem North Fork Payette, this process doesn't work for that. All right, let's jump forward here. Here's just another photo of a willow weaving at work in spring runoff. It's gathering sediment and it's holding that small bank there. And one last photo, this is on Boulder Creek. Just with where we have, this is an up and down vision of the same bank. You can see a willow weaving built at the bottom, and then the structure holds and the willows continue to grow. Another major part of our techniques are just hand planting with 5-gallon containers. And 5-gallon containers are quite large and somewhat expensive, but we've learned that the amount of competition is impressive with the reed canary grass that exists in the systems, and the willows with the large roots, the root wads, they have a lot of energy in those roots, and they're able to establish. So that upper right photo, you can just see some massive willow bushes starting to form. The other thing that we have to do when planting these is plant them at the proper level. So it's really easy to drown a willow or to leave a willow high and dry. And it's sometimes almost a guessing game. We learned really quickly on Boulder Creek that on a large water year, there's so much water stored in the mountains in the form of snow, and the two reservoirs upstream, we ended up drowning willows and drowning some of our willow weavings. So it's important to know your kind of hydrologic situation before you just jump into planting. So here's some more photos of volunteers. We've had 1,000 volunteers participate on this project over the last 10 years. We're digging our plants very deep and they grow up really quickly. Another method we employ here, you can see the vertical undercut eroding bank near us here. And rather than try to deal with that bank directly, we're just trying to reestablish vegetation in the area so that eventually these willows will just grow and take over the area and provide that root force to keep the bank stabilized. In one study I read about, someone had measured willow roots, and in clumped willows found a mile of roots in like a meter squared of willow roots, or of soil. So it's a pretty powerful force, and a lot of times what's missing is just the plants on the stream banks. Another method we employed was willow barbs. This was Bill Lillibridge's design from the Idaho Soil and Water Conservation Commission. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in the Strand project ahead. Don't have a clock in front of me, so I'm trying to keep it fast here. All right, so here's just a couple more photos of the Boulder Creek kind of coming back and headed towards the direction we'd like to see. This photo on the right, that's another larger project that was also designed by the Soil and Water Conservation Commission, and this is a total bank reshaping at Riverfront Park in McCall. So I wanted to give you guys an aerial overview and just kind of see all the places that we've worked at. In fact, there's probably a few missing pins here, but you can see we're working region-wide trying to do something to improve the water quality and as well as fish and wildlife habitat. Okay, and then I'll just jump into a couple of the most recent projects we've worked on. This is the Cascade Strand project. When you saw that slide of all the project partners, Cascade Strand probably is at least half of those project partners. This was a big project that we worked on with the Soil and Conservation Commission and Valley Soil and Water Conservation District. I'm going to show you a photo here of these willow barbs being created on this side channel. And one of these high school students is from Cascade High School who is helping to build this. And I happened to see him at Kelly's Whitewater Park a couple years later, and he talked about the willow barbs and how he was working there. And he said, "Michael, you wouldn't believe it, those willow barbs are holding big fish now." He's like, "We haven't seen fish like that in this section of the river ever." And he's like, "I'm catching really large trout now because of these willow barbs that we built." So we're really happy with the results of this project so far. You can see students also working with those water jet stingers planting willow poles here in this bank. More water jet stinger willows trying to compete with that reed canary grass on the right. And then we also built a fence to keep pedestrians from accessing our bank here. Here's some of our longtime volunteers. We have volunteer regulars that some of them have volunteered longer than I've been employed at Fish and Game. And a lot of them come out project after project so they know what they're doing. I don't have to train them again. And you can see them planting some really large 5-gallon willows in this very sandy stretch of the Payette here on the Strand project. And then I just have a couple after photos here. Before we planted here, these were just completely eroding sandy banks. The river is unnaturally wide here because it's missing its vegetation, and we're just coming back to restore that, and slowly the river will heal itself. And finally, I was going to talk about our West Mountain Road fence that we built along the reservoir. This is with Northwest Youth Conservation Corps, and I was going to go into how all this whole project came together. I know that time is short. I just wanted to mention that Valley Soil and Water and Bureau of Reclamation got together with Fish and Game, and we devised a plan to try to help keep cattle out of the reservoir as well as possible rogue ATVs. And we came up with this big project, and we're about halfway through it. We built about 3 miles of fence from Poison Creek Campground all the way down to Osprey Point. And this was this last summer, these kids building the fence for us. We had Fish and Game staff come and train on fence building. We had some of our fence experts at Cecil Andrus Wildlife Management Area come train because they do fence all day, every day. And then you can see we even made the Star News. Hopefully I haven't stolen too much of Doreena's thunder here, because she's going to talk about some of these same projects. And then I wanted to show this slide one more time because it's very impressive, the amount of project partners that we've had. And I wanted to thank Doreena Farr for the Valley Soil and Water for developing these partnerships, as well as the landowners that have not only allowed us to do projects on their property and have gotten into fish and wildlife habitat, but have also allowed us to harvest willows on their property, as well as the individuals who gave hundreds and hundreds of hours. I think Doreena's going to talk about future projects coming up. So these days, pretty much all of our projects are multiple agency, multiple partners. And so everything that I'm doing, maybe minus a few smaller projects with individual landowners, are all going to be with the Soil and Water Conservation District in Valley County. So I just wanted to let everybody know kind of what's going on in the region and what things we are doing day in and day out to try to help water quality in the system. And with
Excellent.
that, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Michael. Again, I'm going to ask you to, if you can access the Q&A, there's one for you waiting right now. And then I'm going to verbally keep transitioning us onto our next speaker. So thank you for your presentation.